All right, welcome to the show. It's Tiffany Hernandez here, and today I have Shelley Hank with us. Welcome, Shelley.
Hello.
I'm so glad you
Thanks for
could
having me.
join me. Yes. Okay, so I I have this podcast. I have the YouTube channel is all about ADHD, business, neurodiversity, really like mental health and wellness, and that's a lot of what you do. Can you share just a little bit of your background and then we'll like go into it because there's so much we've got to discuss today.
Sure, yeah. So my background is in nursing. So I have a bachelor's in nursing, and then about 10 years ago, I returned back to school and became a whole health educator. So went from the mainstream medical system into more of the health and wellness space and holistic healing space. And more recently, in the last maybe 5 years, I have been blending that with my creativity and artistic pursuits. So, little side note about me is I wanted to go to art school as a child. It was the only thing I ever wanted to do. I wanted to heal and change the world with art. And my guidance counselor told me, no, you need to go get a real job. You need to get a real degree and make real money. And so I put my dreams of going to art school to the side and went to nursing school instead. So we've kind of come full circle.
Great. And now you're actually able to blend the two, which is really what you wanted to do in the first place. So now you have the credentials to back it up, as well as the knowledge
Exactly.
to truthfully help in the health side of things. And when we're talking
Right.
about health, there's so much mental health that's come out. It's becoming more mainstream to talk about mental health and even just, you've got these cognitive things going on with ADHD and autism is coming up a lot more. And so we're seeing the world kind of be more accepting to it, but also be like, okay, so what's the solution? Or it's like, oh, we'll just let them heal or just let them be. They are who they're supposed to be. And while
Hmm.
I agree with that, I do feel like we can do something about it. And that's really what you do with your holistic health is you help people
Exactly.
heal. And so can
Right.
you share a little bit about how that really interacts with how we feel internally? Because I feel like we're not talking about it enough
Hmm.
in the mental health space that your diet, what you do with your lifestyle, like that really matters.
Totally. Yeah. So, as a whole health educator, my philosophy is that we are whole beings, right? So we address the physical um, ailments or, situation that you have going on, any imbalances that you have. We address the nutrition, the the environment, because that plays a big part in it as well. The emotional health and like your dramas and traumas, right? Because that's a big thing that people don't realize. And then your spirituality. Um, all of those things play a part. And I actually don't believe that ADHD is actually one thing. I believe it's a collection of symptoms, almost
Agreed.
like a syndrome, right? That we can say, okay, well, these symptoms are matching up with this ADHD diagnosis. Um, but I don't believe that it has just one cause. I believe some people truly are born with a different type of brain, right? Like a different wiring. It's hereditary, and we've proven that through studies. But then there are other people who their ADHD symptoms are being caused by nutritional deficiencies and by trauma, right? And
Yeah.
so when I work with clients, we're going through every area of your life and we're going through it with a fine tooth comb to find out, okay, where is the area that needs support and how can we address that? And then bringing in the creativity modality that I've developed called Artful Story Work, which is my own methodology that I created, blending sort of my experience as a whole health educator and nurse with my creative practices. I actually believe that the best way to help people heal, and when I say heal, I guess I mean function at the highest level and
Hmm.
reach their fullest potential, right? Um, because I feel that the best way is that we have to address the cell and the story. There's not just one thing, right?
No.
So there's cellular reasons why we are manifesting the way that we're manifesting, but then there is our story, our biology and our biography. They have to come together into one whole complete story.
I
So
am
that's the work
glad
I
that we're
do.
talking about this because I do feel like a lot of it ends up going to the medical side where it's like, oh, it's all these neurological things and it's all of your genetics and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, that's great. But nobody's really connecting the emotional side of this and how much that actually impacts the physical. Uh,
Totally.
I've
Yeah.
had my own traumas. We've all had our own traumas that we like, they could be big traumas or little traumas. It doesn't matter to the
Right.
body. And you can't compare
Right.
your trauma to somebody else's trauma and belittle it to say, oh, well, but at least I didn't have X, Y, and Z. That's way worse than what I experienced. So, like, I've got to be thankful for
Right.
what I have. It's still
Yeah.
trauma to the body, and we still have
Yeah.
to work on it to release it. And with
Right.
what you're doing with the creativity side, can you share a little bit about how that works? Because so many times
Mhm.
we're stifled day in and day out. We're told what to do, especially in our jobs. It's like, okay, just perform, perform, perform. And then we go into this masking mode. And what, like, for a lot of people, they're like, what is
Right.
that? That's like, you're not putting on a physical mask. So what does this mean? And it I've just
Yeah.
started learning about it more as I've paid more attention to mental health that, we're putting on the smile even though we're drowning inside. You have so many people with depression and anxiety that are just barely functioning. They're not thriving, they're
Yeah.
surviving, and we're just all stuck running around in a mask. And so being able
Hmm.
to get those things out on paper or to create however you need to create, like that creation's actually allowing us to get these things out of our central nervous system, right? Can you share a little bit?
Yes, totally. Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And with the masking, so the way I got into doing this work, obviously you don't end up going from like a normal job, normal medical system with a 401(k) and a steady paycheck and all of this and that, right? To then just like, oh, I think I'll just go against all of the
Right.
society and culture and just like start a war.
Right.
You don't do that without having a very big reason why you're doing that, right? It has to be at the core of who you are. Um, and the reason why I got into doing this work was because I had my own health breakdown. I ended up getting extremely sick. I had no idea, even being a nurse, this was about 17 years ago. I had no idea that I was experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean,
Mhm.
I look back on it now and I'm like, duh,
Right.
right? Now that I know all these things, right? Like, of course your body was short circuiting on you, but I didn't know this. Like, my thought about trauma was like, oh, the people that I took care of as a nurse in the VA who had been to war, who were in a mental ward, right? They had trauma. I didn't think that what I had, I mean, I knew it was not good, right? But I didn't understand really what trauma was and how it's stored in the nervous system. And I didn't understand ADHD and all of this, which I now know I've had my whole life, you know, and I had learning, problems and things like that in school, and I was masking. You brought up the
Mhm.
masking. And so I was just masking, masking, masking. And I'm very bubbly, a very bubbly personality and smiley, and that's just how I am. And so I'm not going to just go out into the world and spew my sadness all over the everybody, so
Right.
I would mask. And I'm a helper, so it's like I would help, I would smile, I would pretend at my nursing job that I was quote unquote normal, right? But like I was not normal. I was so ADHD, right? And so traumatized. And now I'm realizing like why I was having panic attacks on my shift home after, because I'm just masking so much. So
Yeah.
um what I had kind of come to the conclusion, so I was sick and then I healed and uh, went through all of that myself. And then I felt really called that I was being called to help other people heal holistically. And so as I'm coaching, I coached about 1,000 clients. I was coaching other health coaches and helping them create their own business and doing business coaching and health coaching. And it was a lot. It was during the middle of COVID,
Ooh,
and there was so much trauma, right? So much trauma
yeah.
that was coming to the surface for people, but people didn't have language for it. They didn't know what it was.
Mm,
And God took me through this really, and even in my own life, I was dealing with during that time, it started to reveal cracks, right? It started to reveal even more for myself. And I just had some life things going on and trying to be the leader and trying to be, you know,
mm-hmm.
the you know the person that I portrayed on the outside, it really challenged me and it pushed me into this cocoon phase. So in this cocoon phase during COVID, which we were all in because we were
Mm-hmm.
isolated, um I believe that God likes to do his greatest work in the dark, so
Yeah,
it's in
it's
the
true.
darkness of COVID. This was when Artful Story Work was born.
Okay.
So you can see behind me, this is an example of an artful story work. This is an expression of both cell and story. So working with people through their story. And there's 3 steps to it of how I help people with the artful story work is first we unearth the story, or sometimes I call it the broken story, um, because we all have broken stories, and we actually engage with the cell and the story in the unearthing process. The cultivation process that we go through is where we do more expressive writing. So, first we get it out on the canvas, the story out on the canvas. What's the story and the cell wanting to say? And what color is it, what texture is it, does it want to speak? Once we get it out on the canvas, what's really beautiful about it is you can step back and visually see in a picture form what is actually going on inside your body, and you're like, whoa. I didn't know all that was going on. And the painting, the picture that we create, sometimes I will create it, sometimes people want me to do it, sometimes they will do it. So I do it both ways. And once they see it in a picture format, they begin to things start to heal already, like things start to shift. Then
Wow.
we go into unearthing.
Mm,
Yeah, where we start to write. And we start to express through expressive writing what is actually happening in that story and what wants to be revealed through on a science level, right? But also on a spiritual level.
mm,
What does the spirit want to reveal, and what does your soul want to say about this
right.
story? What is it longing to express, right? In you and through you. And so then the creation stage happens third, right? So the third part is, I always say, people say, why did this happen to me? Or why am I like this? Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's the wrong question.
Mm,
We need to be asking, what wants to happen through me because this happened to me, or because I am like this, right? Because you were not born
right.
different, right? For no reason. You were born different because the world needed your difference,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's where we step into the creation, the dreaming of what wants to be brought forth into the world and what new story wants to be told through you as a result of what happened to you.
I love that. It's like really
Yeah.
embodying that visual of being the vessel that God created for you to be, and letting him
Exactly.
actually do that work. A lot of times, like you said earlier, we don't have the words to express all of this.
Right.
It's,
Yes, artful story work works when you don't have the words, when you don't have the answers.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what where it will really
help.
shine. Yeah.
I'm glad we're talking about it. I've been doing a lot of work myself, just like figuring out who I am, why I'm here, asking the like, why is this happening
Hmm.
to me? Why am I like this? And it's like a lot of times with the neurodivergent culture, it's like, okay, we're seen as the outcasts, or we're seen as the ones that are having the problems, but actually we're the creatives, we're the thinkers, we're the innovators, we're the ones that push the boundaries, come up with totally new
Right.
ideas that nobody has thought of, because we're connecting all these different elements that nobody has even thought of. And that can be hard
Exactly.
because we are the difference, but there's
We are.
more difference than what we can even see a lot of times. And so I love how you really take it out of the box and put it on the paper, because we are more visual. We just are. When we're
Hmm.
most of us are
Yeah.
visionaries. And so we have
Right.
a totally different view. And so being able to see something, tests are great. Blood work is great. It's really great to see that visual of what's going on the inside. And this is like your blood work, right? But
Yeah.
from a
It is. Yeah.
spiritual perspective, like, what does my spiritual blood work look like? And so when you
Totally.
can paint that picture,
Right.
what are some of the things that you've noticed for some of these creatives that maybe haven't been able to express things? What are some of those things? And I know it's like really, it's very personal, so you don't have to share too much
Hmm.
about it, but what would you say has been a majority of the outcome that you've seen for your clients?
Hmm.
Because I'm sure there's some overlap of what a lot of
Yeah.
people are experiencing.
Hmm. What I find is that it produces wholeness, what I call wholeness. So, yes, health, right? But health is not actually the same as wholeness.
No.
There's a slight difference, right? There is a difference. It's not the same because you can be a perfect weight, you can have perfect blood work, you can have everything on, medically perfect, right?
Right.
But not be whole,
Hmm.
right? And then you can have like maybe your blood work isn't perfect, but you are whole, right? So I feel like it produces wholeness in people. What I find, what people tell me that it does for them is they say, when I come to you, I feel like I have all these pieces of the puzzle, but I can't get them to fit together. I can't see the whole picture. And when doing the artful story work with you, um, what happens is it's like I can see the whole picture. All the pieces fit together now, and I can see how my past, my present, and my future are connected, and I can see where I'm going. I know my purpose, I know my story, I know what I'm creating, and I think what it helps people do is get unstuck and to also reclaim the missing pieces of them that have gotten lost along the way, right? And what that does is energetically, it reclaims what I call your creative power. So, what happens a lot with neurodivergent is because they do have the emotional dysregulation and they have the rejection sensitivity and all this.
Oh
And
yeah.
I feel like most of my clients honestly are I just like attract neurodivergent people and people with ADHD because that's who I am,
We
and the
attract who we
creativity
are.
and things. Yeah, we attract who we are. So most of my clients do, uh, you know, they are that way. And I love it because I understand I understand that type of thinking. And so what they explained to me is that, they had all these like fragmented pieces and all these ideas and da, 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 how it is inside the brain
Yep.
of somebody with ADHD. Right? It's
Yep.
like it's like a carnival in there, right?
Hmm.
But when we do the story work, it's like, oh. I see the story that God's trying to write through me. I see what's happening and how it all interconnects. And now I know my purpose. And I know, like a lot of people talk about motivation and discipline and consistency, right? And I don't know
Hmm.
about you guys, but as an ADHD person, the word discipline and consistency makes me want to throw up.
Mm, mm.
And I
Yes.
know like from all the coaching world, right? I am a coach. I all of that, right? I get it. I get the science that the all the behavioral change science and all of that. I understand. I think that those things were written by neurotypical people,
Uh-huh.
not by ADHD, right?
Now,
And so if you're trying to follow the advice of a um, coach or someone, a book or whatever, and they do not have your brain type, it probably isn't going to work for you and you're going to feel like a
right,
failure. So
right.
what I find is like these leaders and these really high achievers and they get a lot done, right? But they're worn out, right? Because you're losing all this energy from the dysregulation, from the rejection sensitivity and all of
Oh yeah.
this. And so you're losing energy, losing energy through all of these interactions as a leader, as someone who's doing big things in the world, which a lot of ADHD people are because we are visionaries. We're more likely to be entrepreneurs, all of this, right?
Hmm.
So you lose all this energy. What Artful Story Work helps us to do is reclaim that energy, pull that energy back into you. So now you've got all this energy that you can create with, and you have one focus, which is for an ADHD person, right?
Unheard
Because
of.
like what? Right? What? And then it gives you this incredible motivation and focus, right? Which I do not like to call it's inspiration, it's focus, it's clarity, it's
Hmm.
conviction, right?
Yeah.
Which will trump discipline and consistency every day of the week. So
Yes.
you're just like going to be running way ahead of all of your competitors because you can't match that. Like once an ADHD person, neurotypical person gets that on board, like game over, look out.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I'm liking to the fact that you're bringing that up because even for my children, like consistency is hard. Discipline's non-existent. We have a challenge with all these things, and my poor neurotypical husband is more like, why can't they just get it already? I'm like, because they're not typical. They're just not neurotypical. We're neurodivergent, and we just do
It's
things
hereditary.
differently. It's not that it's
Yeah,
not going to get done. It's just going to get done differently and not in the way that you said.
differently. Yeah, like
So,
let's do math at 9 o'clock
yeah,
at night or something. It's um yeah, you do have to gauge, and I homeschooled my children from kindergarten, well, my daughter from kindergarten all the way through graduation and everything, and they're adults now and functioning and amazing people. um and you do it differently. Homeschooling I believe is ideal for neurotypical or
neurodivergent.
neurodivergent children
Yeah,
because
agreed.
school is made for neurotypical people and it works for a good portion of the population it works for. But I used to call school prison. I was like, well, time to go to prison now. Like that was my thought about school, right?
Mhm.
Because it's so rigid, it's so scheduled, everything's a box, everything's checked black and white. And I know there's schools that aren't necessarily like that, and those could be really helpful, but I think yeah, the consistency, the discipline, it's not going to look like, I want you all to know like a new planner and an organizational chart isn't going to fix your
Yeah, I'm
problem.
glad we're talking about
Like
this
I
because
know the dream, I've done it, but it won't fix it.
it doesn't fix it. I've had a million planners and they still have like barely any writing in them because it doesn't work. I'm glad that we're bringing up
Right.
the educational piece because I think a lot of us have actually been traumatized by the educational system, and we do have PTSD from it. And
100%.
there is a lot of
We
things
do.
that we need to unpack from that, and as well as from our childhood, not because our parents maybe were bad. I mean, some of us maybe did have some like really bad childhood situations, but even the ones that
Yes.
maybe didn't have such a bad childhood, it was like, okay, but there still could have been improvement. And you still maybe might have felt like you were masking, like, okay, I was a perfectionist child and I had to get straight A's, and that was my OCD talking, but my ADHD on like was just getting masked and masked and
Yeah.
masked. And so now it's like, who am I? What am I doing with my life? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be
Right.
helping with? I know I have a purpose, but um like, why are we doing all of this? And so when you're
Yeah.
talking about conviction, I just want to
Like,
bring
who
that
said
piece
this
back
is the
up.
rule?
Yes, right. Like, why does this have to be this way?
Who said
Con-
it?
Conviction is
Right.
like really big on this because so many times, especially being religious, being like a faith-based person, we feel really strongly
Hmm.
with conviction. Like, I felt convicted that I needed to homeschool my children and that I needed to leave my dream career of being a designer and all of that
Yeah.
because I felt like God was calling me to come out of the system. Whoo, boy,
Right.
was I in for it. I had no
Yeah.
idea what I was walking into. And a lot of
Hmm.
times, we get to those points in our life where like, okay, I know you told me to do this, but now I'm stuck not knowing where to go next, why you really called me here. I don't feel like I'm being, that vessel. And so that conviction ends up getting muddied. We
Hmm.
lose the conviction, or we get so discouraged because it's like, okay, I got here. Now what's next? I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and things, I just feel like I'm in the pit. And for those people, I'm sure
Yeah.
seeing these things on paper, writing them out, it's helpful,
Yeah.
right? They like get that
Hmm.
conviction back.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Um, yeah, you're going to get resistance whenever you do something creative, whenever you do something that's against the grain, whenever you do something that is on a soul level that's going to bless your soul or the soul of your children. Um, I was listening to a rabbi the other day talking about how with parenting, we need to think about the fact that we're not parenting a child, we are parenting a soul.
Mm,
And I was like,
mhm.
every parent needs to hear this message. I actually shared it um on my Facebook profile because I'm like, everybody needs to hear this, is that you are a soul and your child is a soul as well, right? And you're not parenting that child, you're not teaching that child. You are a soul mentor, a soul guide for that child. And
Mhm.
you were chosen, you know? And so have confidence in that. But you just have to know that you're going to come up against resistance. That's just how it is. Um, as long as you're fitting into the mainstream matrix of how everybody else does things, even holistically, I come up against resistance because I do things holistically and, I don't follow the mainstream way of healthcare. And people think that's weird. And really, I think you have to have it, knowing your story, right, is doing the artful story work. And when you know your story and you're solid in that, it creates that unwavering solid ground, I guess I would say, to where you're just like, you can resist me all you want. I just know that this is the process. And
Yeah.
I know that your resistance will make me grow.
Mm,
Now I was not always that way. um, it's taken me a lot of trial and error to get here, which is why I'm so passionate about helping, people. I call it live out the dream that God has for them.
yeah. Yeah. I'm glad we're talking about resistance. like I'm glad about this whole conversation, but I have a lot of clients where they end up experiencing resistance the second that they start going down that path, and it is
Oh yeah.
inevitable. I don't know if you're familiar, there's some coaches out there that talk about the biblical side of resistance and how in Genesis that was brought up. Like there was chaos, which is the resistance
Yep.
before God spoke and created. And so if we're being told
Hmm.
this from a biblical principle, then we need to understand like that is law. There is a law
Right.
about this resistance happening. Disruption
Right.
follows intention. We're going to
Yep.
come up to this resistance. Unfortunately, we're in a sinful world, and the enemy really
Hmm.
would love for us to all perish. And we have to really
Yep.
fight against the darts of the enemy because he is
Yeah.
coming to destroy whatever he can. And we're not, above that. And so we have to understand that. And I don't think we talk about this enough, especially in entrepreneurship, because boy,
Hmm.
is there a lot of resistance and it gets really tough and you have to keep fighting. And it's a struggle
Yeah.
sometimes. Man, oh man, I'm like, I want to quit this week. I wanted to quit last week. I'm still going, but boy, oh boy, do I
Right.
want to
I'm
quit
like,
because
yeah,
of all the
I read
resistance.
somewhere like if you're an entrepreneur and you're not fantasizing about getting a job at least once a week, then what are you even doing with your life, right? Like you are not doing something right if you are not having a fantasy about having a regular job.
Yeah, a real
But
job.
right. And so I think the longer you do it, the more you start to understand the game that you're in. You have to understand that when you said yes to the dream, you you welcomed resistance. And I would encourage every, like you were like, yes, I would please, like I would like some resistance in my life. Yes, I would. When you said yes to an intentional life, right? The word intentional means intention. So if you don't want tension, if you don't want conflict, if you don't want resistance, do not try to follow your dreams. Sit back down and go to your 9 to 5 and do not, don't homeschool, don't try to do anything creative,
Mm,
right? You just sit down, follow the pattern of the world, and you do what you're told if you don't
right,
want any resistance. There are many, many people that that is the life that they want.
right.
They do want that. They don't, they want no resistance, no, but the problem is for me, and I think for people who do have, who are dream driven, right, is that there is an opposite kind of resistance that comes with that because it's, talking about masking, when you're doing that and you're trying to avoid conflict and you're trying to just be normal, quote unquote, you're masking the whole time and you know that you're not living in your truth. And wholeness is when the ways of your being match the truth of your being.
Mm-hmm.
That's what wholeness is, when the ways of your being match the truth of your being. And so you know full well while you're doing those things that you are not matching the truth of your being. So there's still tension, even though you're trying to get away from the tension. What I have found is, and we work through the resistance in Artful Story Work, and that's a huge part of it. And it doesn't matter what you're trying to create. If you're trying to create a business, if you're trying to create health, if you're trying to create finances, if you're trying to create a new family and a change generational patterns and things like that, break generational chains, whatever you're bringing forth in the world, whatever you're creating, you will get kickback. What I have found is that we can work through that through the Artful Story Work and doing that. And once you clearly can see it and for what it is, it takes the sting away because it's like, oh, I see the pattern. I see the pattern.
Mm,
I see where it's
yes.
showing up. Now it's not a surprise. And I would encourage people to also, especially people of faith, right? Because there's language in the church that's, that we're fighting the enemy. that kind of language, right? We're in a battle, we're in a battle with the enemy. And I would say, and while that is true, I would say reframing it and seeing it from a different
Yes.
perspective is going to be very helpful for people. So I used to be very much in that like spiritual warfare battle mindset, right? That is not going to be a helpful mindset if you want to accomplish your dreams. What you have to learn is that think of the resistance as like darkness in your day, right? There's day and there's night.
Right.
There's your dream and there's resistance. It's not, don't label it bad or good or something that you're fighting, right? We don't fight the night. We don't fight the night. We know that it's happening for us, even though maybe we love the sun, right? Like we love the sun, we want it to be sunny all the time. So when you shift that perspective and you realize like the darkness is for me,
Mm-hmm.
the resistance is for me. The resistance, in fact, is pointing me to my true north. The
Yeah.
areas that you have the most resistance in are the areas that you have been called to take territory in.
Right.
That is your area of authority, the areas where you have the most resistance. And when you realize that and you're like, oh, all the resistance is for me, it's happening for me, not to me. How can I use this resistance to point me in the direction of my dream? And how can I make this resistance my footstool? Right. And in Psalm 139, it says something like, even the darkness is not dark to you.
Yeah. I love
Right.
that.
Or even something along those lines, like even the darkness is light to you, I think it says, even in some translations. And so it's like, what if we saw the darkness as even light?
Mm. Because
Like the
it's for
darkness can
us.
be just exactly because it's for us. Yeah. So when I shifted that, the whole like I'm in a battle and this
Mm-hmm.
and that and all the dysregulation and like people would oppose me, and I mean I just can't believe some of the things that people have said to me. Like I'm like, wow, I cannot believe, and being online, people that don't even know you will just,
Feel free to lay it out.
yeah, and you're like, dang, and as somebody with very empathetic, very, if I'm very sensitive, and it does matter to me, right? I do care about people and things, but the more you're at it, you realize like, oh no, people just project their stuff onto you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, how can that even be for you? You know?
That is true. It's like our perspective of the world is what we end up projecting onto other people. 100%.
Yes.
And it's hard, especially when you're in families that maybe you don't see eye to eye yet. Maybe you're still in
Right.
that tension phase because everybody isn't
Right.
going after their true north. And so you've got a lot of
Right.
dysregulation happening, not only internally, but then externally. And that's what we're seeing on quite a wide scale now. People are getting very short tempered. It's the society, it's the way of the media. We're getting bombarded with all these
Yes.
different ailments of
Right.
sin. And it is like,
Yeah.
yeah, you are in a battle, but I agree with you on the battle side because I've had to come away from that myself. It's like, okay, yes, we are in a battle. We have
Yeah.
those fiery darts,
Right.
but why are we focusing on the enemy?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you focus on Christ. You focus on the truth of who he says you are and the promises of him. And the rest doesn't matter because you're not really in a battle because the battle's already won, right? It's just us awakening to the truth that we are victorious creators, and we actually do have authority. The same spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in us. So the resurrection power, the creative power is ours,
Mm,
but we are blinded to that truth, right? And
right.
we often can start to to make the darkness bigger than the light, and then you start to manifest more darkness.
But
Like you
yeah,
get
which,
more of what you're focusing on.
right. That could be a whole nother topic because I feel like it's that
Oh yeah.
important to discuss. So we might have to have you come back on. This has been such a pleasure. So
Yes.
if anybody wants to work with you, because you do a lot of this soul work that I don't think a lot of people
Mhm.
are even awake to, which is why we're here talking about it. Because I do feel like
Yeah.
if more of us were healed, if more of us like think of the impact that we could have as a whole by
Yeah.
all working on these things, by actually saying, okay, I'm sick and tired of just going with the flow and going with what I've been told. It's not to say that we're trying to be
Right.
non-compliant. That's not it. Like, we want to be good citizens. We want to have that community. We actually really, really care about society. We care about our future generations. But for that to happen, like, we have
Mhm.
to break out of this mold. So if they want to work with you on that, where's the
Right.
best place for them to find you?
Hmm. All socials at Shelley Hink. That's SHELLEYHENK. Um, Facebook and Instagram would be the best ways. And yeah, I'm always on there. Feel free to hit me up in the DMs and um, check out, all of my offerings. Anything, really that you want to transform in your life, you can use Artful Story Work, my Artful Story Work method, in order to help you do that in Artful Story
Right.
Work coaching. Yeah, and I have the Finding Beautiful School of You, which is actually a virtual school that I created to help people walk through sort of a soul pilgrimage, which is super fun. If you are just like, I know there's more, but I don't know, and I know I need healing, but I know I've got this big dream, like, but you just haven't quite fleshed it out yet, and things like this. You want to know your purpose, you want to know your calling. um, that would be a great place for you. We walk through my 4 elements of wholeness, which are feeling, healing, dreaming, and creating.
I love
So
that.
those are the 4 elements of wholeness. Yeah, and it's all very creative, and I think all the neurodivergent people will very much appreciate
Yes.
how I've put it together. So,
I love that.
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate this, and we'll make sure to put all of Shelley's things in the show notes so that way you can go in the description and look it all up, and we'll have links and everything in there. It has been such a pleasure. I'm definitely going to have you come back on so we can have some more conversation. Thanks so much.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure.